In an era defined by global instability, one question looms larger than any other. Is the American empire, the world's undisputed leader for the better part of a century, now crumbling before our very eyes? For decades, its power has seemed absolute. This is the nation with the world's largest economy, a military expenditure greater than that of the next 9 countries combined, and a cultural influence that reaches every corner of the globe. Yet beneath this surface of strength, deep fractures are spreading. These are not random events, but symptoms of a familiar historical pattern, a cycle of rise and fall that has defined great powers for millennia. The decay is manifesting in 3 critical areas. First, an overwhelming economic burden, driven by a national debt so large it threatens the country's long-term stability. Second, a severe internal war, where bitter political polarization and staggering social inequality have paralyzed the nation, eroding the very trust that holds a society together. And third, a waning global influence as the rise of new powers, particularly China, challenges American dominance on the world stage. These fractures suggest the United States is approaching a historical turning point. The combination of internal decay and external pressure is not a unique American crisis, but a classic story that has marked the twilight of history's greatest empires. Are we simply witnessing the inevitable decline of a superpower? And what does it mean when the foundations of world order begin to shake? The unquestioned empire. A brief backstory. To understand the decline, we must first appreciate the peak. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the United States entered what historians call the unipolar moment. For a time, its global dominance was virtually unchallenged. America became the epicenter of global innovation, finance, and military force, shaping the world in its own image. This was not a traditional empire of territorial conquest, but one of influence, maintained through trade, investment, and military coercion. The pillars of this power were immense. Economically, the Bretton Woods Agreement had established the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, granting America unparalleled financial power. Militarily, its ability to project force was unmatched, setting international standards and securing access to vital resources across the planet. And institutionally, it led the liberal world order it had helped create, hosting and funding global bodies like the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. Culturally, its soft power was just as potent. From Hollywood to Silicon Valley, American ideals and innovations became global trendsetters. In this era, America stood alongside the Roman, British, and Ottoman empires as a great power in history, reaching its imperial peak. But as Ray Dalio outlines in his study of historical cycles, no empire lasts forever. They rise through innovation and strength, but eventually fall due to unsustainable debt, internal conflict, and external competition. The story is always the same. And now, the very foundations that supported America's global dominance are showing profound and undeniable stress fractures. The cracks in the foundation. The first and most quantifiable crack in the foundation is economic. An empire runs on wealth, but the United States is now sustained by debt. In fiscal year 2024, the U.S. national debt reached an astronomical $35.48 trillion. With a GDP of $28.82 trillion, the country's debt-to-GDP ratio now stands at 123%. This means the nation owes significantly more than its entire economy produces in a year. According to Ray Dalio's Big Cycle framework, this reliance on borrowing and printing money is not just a policy choice. It is a classic late-stage symptom of a declining empire, struggling to maintain its commitments and way of life. While the economic decay eats away at the nation's finances, an internal war is tearing apart its social fabric. Political polarization in the US has reached an all-time high, creating a state of perpetual gridlock that obstructs governance and makes addressing critical long-term issues nearly impossible. This division runs deeper than simple policy disagreements. A recent study from the University of Connecticut concluded that for many, the inclination to protest is driven less by concern for a specific issue and more by a profound hatred of the opposing political party. This is a politics of pure animosity, what researchers call negative partisanship, and it signals a fundamental breakdown in civic discourse. This environment has allowed populist movements to flourish, challenging democratic norms and revealing a deep loss of faith in the system itself. This political fracture is magnified by a social one, a staggering gap between the rich and the poor. A Congressional Research Service report highlights the dramatic escalation of income inequality over the past 4 decades. In 1975, the average income of a household in the top 20% was 10.3 times larger than one in the bottom 20%. By 2019, that gap had widened to 16.6 times. This vast economic chasm erodes social cohesion, fuels resentment, and destroys the public trust necessary for a democratic society to function, creating a nation divided against itself. An indebted and divided nation is less able to project power and lead effectively on the world stage. America's internal struggles have coincided with the rise of powerful challengers, particularly China. Now the world's second-largest economy, China is directly contesting American dominance in trade, technology, and geopolitics with strategic initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative. This has accelerated the shift away from a unipolar world, led by the US, to a multipolar order, where America must compete with rivals who are becoming more forceful within their own spheres of influence. Conclusion: the inevitable twilight? The convergence of these forces, crippling debt, intractable internal division, and diminishing global power, presents a compelling case for the decline of the American empire. These symptoms are not new or uniquely American. They are the classic, almost predictable indicators of a great power in its later stages, echoing the fates of the Dutch, British, and Roman empires before it. History teaches that such declines are often accelerated by the failure to recognize and adapt to a changing world. The final, unsettling question returns to the present. Are we witnessing an inevitable historical cycle play out in real time? And does the lack of a unified national response, the political paralysis, the social fragmentation, signify a passive acceptance of this decline? The ultimate outcome remains unwritten, but one thing is certain: the United States is undergoing a fundamental and likely irreversible transformation. It is being forced to redefine its identity and its role in a world that no longer bends so easily to its will.